And my name is Lori Stevens. I've been with ABC for almost 2 years. And prior to being at ABC, I came from a large restaurant corporation headquartered in the center of Florida in Orlando. Spent 12 years there, and prior to that, did some stints in sales with Ecolab and doing some product development and quality assurance in the citrus industry. So I'm glad to be joining you guys today.
All right, so on today's agenda for the webinar, our goal is to talk about how and why to implement Product Specification Compliance Program. We're going to refer to that as PSC, to protect your food supply chain. Some of the specific topics we're going to cover today are why would you start a Product Specification Compliance Program? You know, what visibility are you trying to gain in your supply chain, and what really is the point, what really do I gain for outsourcing product cutting? We're also going to talk about how do you do this? How do you know what to test on a given product? How do I know when to test a given product? How funding of a program like this is done, and how a third-party lab can be a great partner in setting up a Product Specification Compliance Program. All right, so a little bit of background on ABC Research. We are an independent third-party ISO 17025 accredited food lab. We've been in business since 1967, and we're one of the largest and most comprehensive food testing laboratories in the United States. We have full microchemistry, sensory, and physical testing capabilities, and we work with every food or drink you can possibly imagine. Our clients span anybody from growers of fresh vegetables, aquaculturists, all the way down the supply chain to restaurant, grocery, and food service. So we have a big variety of products we work with, and we've been doing it for quite a while. Just to give you an idea of our capabilities, we are a technology-supported quality management system. This is a software system that we're coming out with this summer to help our clients manage their data and do trending and scorecarding. As a lab, we have multiple scientific disciplines. Again, we do chemical and nutritional testing. Nutritional testing is one of the core competencies of our chemistry group, along with things like pesticide residue and antibiotic residue testing. We do microbiological testing on food, product quality testing. That could be anything from shelf life studies or cooking performance or yield studies. We do sensory testing, trained and untrained sensory testing, and forensic testing, which means we do unknown ID. We also have a sector of our business that concentrates on import and export support for FDA-detained products. And we also, we say we work with food, but we work with everything that touches food as well. So that means our TruePerform benchmark and ad claim validation services. Those are validation services that concentrate on small appliance and home use containers that deal with food and the advertising claims that those folks like to make on their packaging. Overall, because of the wide variety of things we work on and the varied backgrounds of our scientists, from being food scientists to microbiologists, analytical chemists, we are allowed to do a lot of consulting and support in varied industries. All right, so what does all this mean for you fine folks that have joined us today? Just to talk a little bit about how our capabilities all build into some of our compliance programs. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about compliance programs on products. So establishing strong product specifications and then testing compliance for those specifications.
All right, so now what we want to do is get started into looking at our product specification compliance programs. So as food safety professionals, the work that we do can be bucketed into 3 main groups. And what these are is the orange box at the top are everything we do around facilities. And the gray box on the right is everything we do around data management and reporting. But what we want to focus on today is product compliance. And so it's one of the big elements where we can make a difference as quality assurance professionals. So how do we make the right decisions? How do we make the right difference and take the right actions? So let's take a minute and look at a supply chain, right? So this is the farm to fork, pond to plate, lots of creative things that people come up with. But if we're going to focus on products, how do we know that our products are compliant and then therefore we're mitigating the risk, right? And how we want to do that is by looking at whether or not our products comply with the specifications that we've set out. And we can do that at a number of different points in the supply chain because there's different risks at every point in the supply chain, right? And so what we need to do is take a look at our businesses and what makes food safety and food quality sense, but also business sense, right? We are all in businesses. I don't think we even had anyone from academia that joined us, but we're all here to keep our businesses going, protect our brands, those kinds of things. So what we're going to do is test for compliance to the specification. So certainly as we talk about this, you'll realize that the first step in all of that is having a solid product specification. Trying to advance.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about specifically what is a product specification compliance program. A PSC is a fully managed supply chain quality assurance tool, and it's focused on highlighting areas of noncompliance and concern before a food safety or quality event occurs. In these programs, a third-party lab such as ourselves would compare suppliers' products to your purchasing specifications to ensure that the products are being made to specification. And I have a question here. Is this just testing products? It does include testing products to their specification, but we're also talking about reviewing the specification on a regular basis and making sure things like ingredient statements and allergen statements are updated in real time. Another benefit you can gain from a program like this is the ability to write specs, tighten specs, do product matching based on a current spec, and it also allows you a good, non-biased way to vet new suppliers and new products.
Right. So what's the best way that we can set up quality assurance programs? This one specifically focused on products, right? So I will say that there is a best way to set up any quality assurance program, right? So this is a 100,000-foot look at the best way to set up a program. And so I'd like to hear your comments back too on if you agree with me on this graphic here. But definitely what we will do as quality assurance professionals, right, is set up our best practice requirements. So we learn from every source we can, every person, every company that we come in contact with. And we set up requirements. And then we communicate those to, in this case, the supplier. So we say, this is what it takes to do business with XYZ food company. And so we will then implement those requirements. So in this case, that would be our Product Specification Compliance program. So that gets implemented. And then we go into the testing phase of the program. So we're going to validate that the products comply with the specification. So that's testing, right? And then when they do not comply with the specification, then we go into correcting those deviations. So that's our whole corrective action, preventive action mode. And then we're going to report on this compliance. So we're going to use this data to drive continuous improvement, to fix the errors that are out there, to make our product better, as Gil said, tighten specifications, all of that kind of good work that we are charged with. And that, of course, then brings us back to what our requirements are. What we find in our reporting then affects what requirements we lay out there for our suppliers. And in our experience, we have definitely found that bringing in technology to support these programs so that they are enabled with technology, especially the data collection and reporting, is extremely valuable. So these are the best practices and how we will encourage you to set up a proper PSC program.
So what purpose do product specification compliance programs serve? We've found the easiest way to explain this is they really empower the army of one. I know from Lori's experience in the restaurant industry and our experiences with clients, quite often the folks who have the most responsibility for food safety and food quality are an army of one, maybe two individuals, even in very, very, very large enterprises. You know, that person has a lot on their plate, a lot of moving parts to watch, and usually doesn't have a large support staff or a large budget. So, you know, outsourcing this type of program really does build upon, you know, the power of the data and getting you more visibility in your supply chain. PSCs give a non-biased measure of quality and consistency through your supply chain. You know, as I said at the beginning, we're a third-party independent food lab. We do science, we don't take sides. And that's a nice way to have your products evaluated, because there is no influence on, you know, from price per pound or supplier relationships. We can put out good non-biased data. And then, of course, we do help suppliers that have compliance issues. And we will talk through the technical aspects of the food science and all of that behind the testing. But using a third-party lab is a really good way to have non-biased data. PSCs also assure your specifications and metrics of performance are up to date. And they assure that you're getting what you pay for from your suppliers. And anybody who's in procurement or is adjacent to procurement can appreciate that fact. And I think the easiest way to talk about the program as a whole is to say that product specification compliance programs ensure that due diligence is performed. Now let's talk a little bit about due diligence. It's a term that I think many of us use on a regular basis, but to really examine what the words mean, I think gives you a very clear indication of what we should all be looking for as food safety and quality professionals. So if you look at due diligence, really it's an investigation of a business or person prior to entering into a contract or an agreement. And that's done to a certain standard of care. Standard of care is the degree of prudence or caution that an individual who is performing acts could, or excuse me, the prudence or caution required of an individual who is performing acts that could foreseeably harm others. So right there, as food safety and quality professionals, you know, we're all looking for the prevention of a food safety event. Quality does play a role in that, because quality can be tied directly to food safety. You know, if you have inconsistency in the thickness or weight of your chicken fillets, but you always cook them the same amount of time, eventually you're going to get a chicken fillet that's too thick and ends up being undercooked in the center. You just went from a food quality issue directly to a food safety issue and a possible food safety event that could harm someone. So I think when we talk about due diligence, it relates very well to food safety, because somebody not covering their due diligence is easily opening themselves to a negligent claim. Specifically, when we talk about due diligence with food safety, you know, I just gave you the example of the chicken breast that's too thick being, you know, an area of concern. So really, what we want to do is look at source inspections or source surveillance. So what we're talking about is product surveillance today with the Product Specification Compliance program, and doing those product assessments. So due care in supplier quality is the effort made to validate the conformance of a product provided by the seller to the purchaser. So again, making sure you're getting what you're paying for from your suppliers and having full visibility of the way they're behaving and the products that they're creating. And again, without the due diligence, negligence exists. If you can't see what's going on in that supply chain, you never know what bus is coming around the corner. All right, so how does a product specification compliance program fit into your duty as a food safety and quality professional? I would make the argument that the 4 bullet points on this slide are a part of all of your daily lives, of all of your daily work lives. So, you know, you're charged with, you know, continually working with suppliers to improve performance and quality plans. You interact routinely with purchasing, with culinary, and with suppliers to improve quality of components. You analyze supplier capabilities and develop and maintain supplier quality metrics and specifications, and performing, you know, supplier quality audits and providing support for quality supplier systems. That's all part of your daily job And those are exactly, in my opinion, the duties that would be covered under due diligence in food safety. So a product specification compliance program fits right in with what you all's main focuses should be every day.
Okay, and here we're going to highlight some of the reasons, additional reasons besides the due diligence and due care that Gil shared with us about implementing a third-party managed compliance program. We're going to, again, remove subjectivity. I've been in a number of situations where I got supplier pushback of that, well, where'd this data come from? Well, who generated it? Well, Bob down in the test kitchen weighed up a couple of chicken tenders, and this is what he came up with. And that doesn't always work, especially when you're in a situation where there's some angst going on, shall we say. So making this, taking out the subjectivity, taking out the bias definitely strengthens the data acceptability so that all parties will accept it, and that includes upper management too. Again, where'd this data come from? And it ensures that the data is not going to be skewed. Again, taking out the subjectivity. It has nothing to do with supplier relationships, how much the product costs, all those kinds of things. And bringing in a third party definitely helps establish a best practice program, right? There's lots and lots of product compliance programs out there, but how do you make sure it's the best one available and the best one that fits your supply chain? We all know that supply chains are, there's an average supply chain, but then mine is always special, and I do hear that a lot. And it's true, absolutely. So then budget constraints and headcounts. I mean, headcount is huge. It always was in my previous life. Is that's great, Lori, but you can't have anybody else to get that done. But it's a great idea. Go for it. And that only works to a certain point. So bringing in a third party can be an extension of your team. It can be the sixth man that is a consultant and help you accomplish the goals that you need to. And we're going to talk about creative ways that we're going to do that with budgeting. And that's a slide coming up, I think. And so then technology as well. A large part of my life in the restaurant industry was dealing with technology, and it's extremely expensive. There's a lot of very good systems out there, but implementing them is generally difficult. They generally have to be customized. So integrating a technology that's already based on best practices, something like a third-party lab, like an ABC would offer to you, is extremely valuable. And it really makes you have the information that you're looking for as an end result. So reporting is much easier. So you set up the program appropriately, so then at the end you have information that can be shared and useful. Use it to drive your actions, you can give it to purchasing, and then they can bring in quality and food safety into their decision-making process, which is, I think, where we all want to be. That's how we work as a team to continue to move the needle forward.
That's great, and we do have a question actually on technology and software. So one of our folks says, what are the best methods and software programs you would recommend in regards to logging and tracking data? So it's kind of a broad question, and we're a little biased here at ABC Research because we offer one of those systems. So I will try to be non-biased and say that two things that I would look for if I was going to evaluate systems out there. One would be that the system is based on best practices and that the folks who design the system actually understand what the data is, where it came from, what regulatory issues you have to face, what you're going to use the data for. I would wholeheartedly recommend a system built by food and restaurant professionals. It makes a big difference because we've seen good and bad and otherwise out there. Secondly, and it's a little bit of a different spin, I would look for a system that is based on a subscription model, only because, well, there's two reasons. One is it's very, very hard to sell up the ladder a massive capital outlay. I mean, I think if any of us have tried it, it's, you take a beating on the way. because of the way it can be accounted for, a subscription-based model is a lot more palatable to the CFO that we all have to go to, that holds the purse strings. So I would look for a subscription-based model. I think that also subscription-based models allow you to reap the benefits of software upgrades and improvements, you know, in real time. You're not stuck with version 3.2 and you're waiting until you wear it out and then you can jump to version 6.4, even though there have been a million versions in the middle. So those are my two cents without completely plugging our personal software solutions. I'm trying to be non-biased, as we've already talked about. We do also have another question that's more of a HACCP-based question that I think I would like to deal with offline. So we'll do that in a little while. So let's talk about who can benefit from a product specification compliance program. I mean, obviously restaurant chains, anyone who has a large number of suppliers and really wants to maintain quality and consistency through that supply chain. Hospitality groups as well, you know, hotels, cruise lines, casinos, anyone who's buying, you know, large amounts of food that has, you know, first, second, and third line suppliers for different products. Institutional food service, obviously another group, and really even down to grocery and retail, anybody who has a private label brand. You know, you're competing with the national brands, you know, head to head on all of those items. You want to make sure that those co-manufacturers and those co-packers for your products are making the product that you want, you know, and that's based on that purchasing specification. All right, so boiling it down to the nitty-gritty, how do these programs work? Excuse me. Your product specifications are really the basis for the program. Now, if you're sitting in the audience and you're going, oh gosh, I don't even have good specs, or I don't even have any specs at all, or I bet my specs really need some work, that's the first thing that we're going to address with a client. Is let's get the specs in order. Let's make sure that they're robust enough to provide a good, solid foundation for a product specification compliance program. Then what we're going to do is review each product for relative food safety risk and relative brand impact to determine its testing frequency. And Lori will go into this with a little bit more detail on the next or in future slides. Product is then sourced directly from distribution to ensure a random and timely sample. So we want to get the next sample that's going out to the restaurants, and we want to do that for a couple of reasons. We don't want it to be cherry-picked by a supplier, so we're not going to ask the suppliers to submit a sample. And secondly, you know, we want a good random sample, and we turn around the testing fast enough where you'll be able to nail a quality or a food safety concern before your operators have the products in their locations. So product is tested and the specification is reviewed for accuracy and compliance. And then those results are communicated with, they would be communicated with both you and the supplier. We are a confidential lab, and that's a very important part of our business. So in any of these projects, you know, we have the supplier sign a release of authorization of results where we can share the analytical results with the buying company. And that's very important to say. But again, past that, our confidentiality policy stands. If there are issues when we do the testing and compare to the spec, we will solicit a root cause and corrective action from the supplier. And then future testing frequency of that product is determined on current performance. So if the product has looked good over time, you know, we'll say they get off for good behavior, their testing frequency will drop. If we're consistently seeing issues with a product, we will keep it at a higher testing frequency until the issues are resolved. And then data generated over time can be used in trending and scorecarding of suppliers. That's really the ultimate, is not only to give you visibility now in your supply chain, but also to have your suppliers understand that that you're going to be watching the products in the future and working with them to maintain a high level of quality. All right, so this is a great visual that I'm going to let Lori talk through to it kind of assigns roles in a PSC program. Thanks.
so the first two squares, rectangles I guess they are, on the left-hand side are the things that you will be working with a third-party lab partner to do together. So that's product specifications. So if you have great product specifications that you think are fantastic, great, but do let your laboratory partner review them because, again, they know best practices. They've seen a bunch of stuff out there. They can always help make it stronger. So that's something to do together. And then a product risk assessment. We're going to talk about the risk points here, what falls under different types of risks. But product risk will directly impact your testing frequency. So if it's a high risk, meaning it has a high brand impact. So in my old role, if you were in a situation where there weren't little cheesy round biscuits, then they were 86'd for some reason, then heads would roll. That definitely counts as a risk. So those are the first two steps as we look at a tactical overview of what this program would look like. And then once the program is established and those things are done, then it turns over to being a fully managed program by the third-party lab partner. So all the rest of these light green boxes then are things that the lab partner will do for you. You go off and do the things that are critical to your brand and your company, and at this point is when you let the laboratory partner help you with the tactical and administrative stuff. So they will do the sample ordering and the logistics, make sure that you're not testing 2 months in a row of the same product code. That doesn't really help anyone. And then we move into the actual testing. So they will test the product according to the specification. So the specification obviously has to be set up appropriately. So the things that are tested on finished product are highlighted in the specification. And that's part of setting up a solid spec. And then corrective actions. If you do see any deviations, then it's a situation where the third-party laboratory partner can do that work for you and report back on corrective actions as they've been closed. If they haven't been closed, then you get to the point where you're dealing with maybe the 10% of suppliers that are non-compliant instead of 100% of suppliers that are non-compliant. Again, frees up your time to do the things that only you can do for your company. And then going to the Kelly green box, then, what this will give you then is visibility into your product compliance. So remember before when we looked at the supply chain and we talked about there's lots of places for risk, places where you can go in and figure out what's going on and have visibility. This is what's going to get that for you. So you'll be able to see who's compliant, who's not. You'll be able to compare North American radishes against Argentinian radishes, those kinds of things. And you'll have a lot more information to see what your supply chain looks like. And then trend and track, as Gil was talking about before with the data management, then that's where you can do some predictive analytics and say, my radishes from North America are not looking good. They are cruising for a bruising. They look like they're about to go out of spec. I need to pick up the phone. I need to get one of my guys down there, something. It's going to, again, be able to drive the right action for your team. And it'll be able to give you information to share with your leadership to say, all right, next quarter we need to be in Argentina because our radishes are not going to look good, that kind of idea. And so that's what we will end up with is that pretty green box that gives us visibility. Okay.
Yeah. And so we have a question from the audience. The question is, does your system allow for suppliers to send you out turn reports and you verify through your evaluation?
Yeah. So just to help with the vocabulary there, out-turn reports are supplier results where a supplier would be double-checking their own finished product and have a report of that data. And so the answer to the question is yes. The system that we will launch on May 1st takes data from all different sources. So it'll take first-party data, so it'll take your data. It'll take second-party data, so that's supplier data. So that would be absolutely the out-turn reports. Third-party data, that would be the data generated by ABC or even another third-party laboratory, because the value of the system we're about to push out is that all the data is in one place. So then you'd be able to churn and burn that how you want it. So show me supplier versus my third-party audit, and you'd be able to graph that out and see how that data is trending, your third-party versus your supplier data. So that's a long answer to yes.
All right, great. Oops, let me go back a slide. Just some additional benefits of a product specification compliance program. We talked a little bit about testing and vetting new suppliers and new products. That could be, another supplier of a current product you have. It might be a completely new product to your menu. It might be a limited time offer. By employing a third-party lab, you really gain a lot of access to different types of scientists. So sensory scientists for product matching, food scientists, chemists, microbiologists for forensic investigations. We even have an entomologist that's on staff that does insect ID. So there are a lot of different things. We say that we work with clients all across the U.S., but we always tell people, just consider us your private lab down the hall. We're always a phone call away, and you've gained 80 scientists on your team when you work with a third-party lab, because all of us are at your disposal. All right, so you're ready to gain some visibility in your supply chain. You're ready to implement a PSC program. So let's do a little gap analysis and talk about, how much visibility do you have now? Maybe you're doing some product cuttings in-house, and you'd like to gain some independence and get rid of some bias by outsourcing those. Maybe you're not doing any product cuttings at all because your enterprise has just gotten to that point where you really need to start looking at products and looking at specification compliance. So, do a little self-evaluation of what kind of visibility do I have now in my supply chain. Ask yourself the hard question of, have I done my duty as a food safety and quality professional? Am I performing my due diligence? Am I thinking about the aspects of my job that require me to prevent harm, preventing a food safety or a food quality event? To what standard of care are we controlling our supply chain? How much prudence and how much caution and how much control do I really have? If questioned because there was an event, can I say I've dotted every I and I've crossed every T and I've been watching? And of course, events are still going to happen, but I've done my duty as a food safety professional. And then thirdly, determine the stakeholders in your organization. I know a lot of the times a quality assurance and food safety professional will approach us and all the enthusiasm is there. It's so easy to see the value in a program like this, but sometimes it's hard to communicate that value to other folks in their organization. So what we like to do with our clients is go ahead and talk to them about the different stakeholders in their organization. And every organization is different, but usually we find that there's going to be a VP or an EVP of food safety and quality that's obviously going to need to have buy-in and also see the value. Legal. The legal group, they usually don't take much convincing because they understand duty and due diligence like nobody's business. Legal or risk mitigation is always a stakeholder. R&D and culinary. These folks are definitely a stakeholder for food safety and quality. It's all about consistency, high quality foods. That's really the brand, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about this being part of brand protection. Purchasing. When we talk about, are you getting what you're paying for? Purchasing can glean a lot of information from a PSC program. Not only do they see how compliant their suppliers are, how well the products match what they're asking for, but we've also seen clients that take that information and actually use it in negotiating future prices with their clients. If you can stand to have some suppliers that are in 95% compliance and some suppliers that are in, let's say, 85 to 90% compliance, I hope that you're not paying the same price for that product that's 85 to 90% compliance. So purchasing definitely gets a lot of power out of this as well. And then the C-suite. The C-suite is probably the most difficult to kind of wrap your head around. You're talking about the chief financial officer, operations, chief executive officer, or in some cases a board. I would actually boil it right back down to really looking at the risks that are out there and what you're gaining from a program like this as far as visibility and the ability to say, look, I've done everything that I could to prevent these risks from happening. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that.
So the Product Specification Compliance Program, that's getting to be a mouthful, these 5 steps are our way of boiling down what a real program would look like for you as you start to have this conversation with the stakeholders, right? So we hoping to equip you now with some slides that you can turn around and share for when this becomes important to you, right? So as we get to a point where we're working to get one of these programs in place. And so these 5 points then go back to the graphic with the 5 boxes and the big arrow, right? So we have our requirements, and those are, in this case, in the form of product specifications. So they're fundamental, they're foundational for what we're doing. And then we want to be able to share the requirements and implement a program like this with our suppliers. And so looking for support here, especially if you're the army of one, is very, very important. So communication to suppliers, onboarding suppliers, there's really no training or anything like that. It's just, at that point, logistics and ordering and getting the product in for testing. And then validating the compliance. And so that's the testing part of it. So what we want to look at here then, very specifically, is this is a short way to say that the risk assessment that we do, again, directly ties to how often we will test a product. And these 5 bullet points are all things that the stakeholders in the conversation can buy into immediately, right? So food safety, that is oftentimes the way that a C-suite person would talk about that would be headline management. Let's keep our brand out of the headlines. Let's not cause any food safety issues at all. Brand impact, right? So a product that impacts the brand to a point that heads will roll if it's not available is a huge risk to the brand. So that if you're a rib restaurant and you don't have ribs, we have a pretty serious opportunity, a big impact to our brand. Then also, if we're thinking about risk, if we are spending a lot of money on one particular product, that's a big risk, right? So lots of companies have that with particular raw ingredients that are maybe land-based proteins, seafood, stuff that's super expensive. And if that's wrong, or if we have to turn that away, that's going to be a real financial impact to our organization. Then certainly single-sourced. If we're buying something that's important, let's say a specific cheesecake, and it's single-sourced from one plant in North Dakota, and if that freezes in the winter, then we have a real opportunity. That would be a really high risk. Certainly something we want to avoid, but that raises the risk assessment considerably if something's single-sourced. And then if something that's formulated just for my brand, so if it's something that my chefs and my R&D has come up with, then that is a formulation that we own, and that means that no one else is looking at it. So it's not Doritos and it's not Coca-Cola. I'm the only one seeing that. I'm the only one serving that to guests or sending that to a customer. So that raises the risk assessment, certainly. And then our next 2 steps there that we talked about are correcting deviations against our validations, and then reporting that in a way that drives the right action, drives continuous improvement. And we're going to share that with our suppliers and our internal teams, specifically purchasing.
All right, so the next, so this slide, and actually the one that we just covered, we gave you guys these just to get, to think about the different types of products that you have, really get a good brainstorming session going on how you communicate this and how you show value. And one of the things that we really enjoy doing with a prospective client is getting together and helping you demonstrate the value of a PSC. So getting together with the food safety and quality professional and saying, we got to monetize this risk, because the CFO, the CEO, and the COO, they're going to understand the dollar sign, and they're going to understand, brand impact in the form of money. How much is a bad headline going to cost us? What about if we have negative impact to our customers and operations? And then we're going to we like to get together with our prospects and walk through the due diligence exercise and really arm you guys with the appropriate way to talk to your legal department. So for prospects that are interested in PSCs, this slide is something that we run through, and we will go in and sit right next to you in that big boardroom and talk all the way through this with all of your stakeholders. So we call it a fully managed program, and it's a fully managed program even before you implement it. So this is something you don't have to think about this, and you don't have to build your case alone. We can definitely help you do that. And so really the major value here is reduction of risk, increased visibility, and it's an easy to implement program with a short to immediate return on investment. So let's talk about return on investment for a second. How do I fund a product specification compliance program? In most cases, it's common practice to have suppliers be responsible for covering the costs of their own compliance. And I think that this does two things. Well, actually it does three things. One, if you are that army of one or maybe an army of two with a limited budget, it allows you to implement a program, glean all of the data from it without any cost to you. Secondly, if suppliers are responsible for covering the cost of their own products, it really creates a partnership for quality. They're in it to win it right there with you. They want to make products that fit the specification, that are going to make you happy, because they understand that they do get off for good behavior. They want to get a high score on the test because they don't want to have their product looked at every month. They want to get dropped down to twice a year for good behavior. And so that in turn ensures timely improvements and continued good behaviors by suppliers. When setting up a PSC through a third-party lab, that third-party lab will handle all invoicing directly to suppliers. We consider this part of, again, the fully managed option through ABC Research. We will set up the entire billing and logistics for getting product, billing back suppliers for their testing. So again, it's really a hands-off kind of program until you get all of that wonderful data at the end of it. All right, so we've given you guys a lot of stuff to think about today, and your question might be, well, what do I do next? Again, we have some time for questions today. We got about 15 minutes for questions, but everybody has unique aspects to what they do, so we just encourage any of you, any of the 88 of you that joined us today, to give us a call or write us an email and just say, at my enterprise we do things such and such a way, and let's talk about it. Because I think we've seen in the last almost 50 years, we've seen one of everything. So please give us a call to talk about product specification compliance programs. All right, so what questions do we have from the audience? Oh, sorry guys, I keep advancing.
So maybe you.
There we go. Ooh. See if we have it. Sorry guys, I'll get you back to the slide now. Wanted to see my question. All right, so we have a question. While I appreciate the comprehensive turnkey approach, do you offer any or all of these services in a cafeteria manner? We definitely do. That's a great question. Today we did talk about the fully managed option. We can look at your top 20 products, or and now that could be top 20 in spend, it could be top 20 in brand impact. if you wanted to just go through your specifications and validate your nutritional data on any or all of your products, we can do that for you as well. So we definitely do offer these services in a cafeteria manner, and that's something that when we sit down with a future client to discuss demonstrating the value in a PSC, that's the type of thing that we'll address, and we can go piece by piece.
And I'd like to add to that too. It makes sense also to develop a phased-in program. So let's say you just want to do some portion of it now, whatever is your biggest point of pain. But then as we would work together and have a conversation, we can easily lay out a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3, based on whatever meets your needs. That does a lot of things. It shows your leadership that you are a strategic planner, that you know what needs to be done, and that's something that's pretty fun to do, actually.
All right, so next question, how many suppliers do you currently have in your database that are on this program for your current clients? I believe that the gentleman asking this question, I'm going to assume that you're talking about not only the testing of products, but I'm going to assume you're talking about our software solution as well. We have several restaurant chains that we do product specification compliance programs with now. And they look at their data currently either in our LIMS system or in customized reports that we provide to them in real time. For the technology that we were mentioning earlier, that technology actually comes out in May of this summer, which will expand our capabilities as far as trending, scorecarding, all of that. So we will transition most, if not all, of our clients that do product specification compliance work with us now onto that software platform, but nobody is using it currently because it does come out in May. All right, next question. How much does it cost to have a nutritional facts label audited? There are a couple of different ways to do this, and I do have your contact information, so I'm happy to discuss analytical methods and shoot you a price quote offline. So I'm not brushing you off, I'm just taking it offline. Next question, are you able to also provide the complete services for the nutraceutical industry? I realize this is considered food as well, but I also know it is an industry with higher regulations and expectations. We do work with nutraceuticals. You're right, they do have some interesting regulations from time to time. We do things like not only can we do a nutritional facts panel for a food item, we can also do a supplement panel if you, for some reason, have dietary supplements in the mix of your ingredients. So we can definitely handle nutraceuticals as well. And if you'd like more information on that, there is a nutraceutical portion of our website that you can check out. All right, since you're based in Gainesville, how do you manage product in a DC in California? We can do that a couple of different ways. We do have samplers that are spread across the U.S. that we can use for sampling in a distribution center or sampling at a port if that's an issue as well. Secondly, we have very competitive negotiated rates with different couriers across the U.S. So depending on the location, the pounds per case, whether the product needs to be shipped on dry ice, all of that, we've worked very hard to get incredibly good negotiated rates for overnight shipping. So we can pass that savings on by building the shipping rates into our PSC programs. And so we can move product at rates that you would not even believe. So although we are in Gainesville, Florida, we do work with folks and products that are located all over the U.S. Okay, next question. Our company is going to be doing some in-house microbiological testing soon. Does our system need to be validated by a third party such as your lab? This is kind of a question, and I'm happy to take this one offline as well. The answer is it depends. So for the gentleman who asked this question, I will contact you after this webinar and kind of get some more details rather than sharing those details with the whole group. All right, any other questions? Well, if not, I actually have a question for the group, and this is something for you guys to think about. You can answer now using the same question format, or we will be sending up kind of a follow-up email afterwards. If there are any subjects, if you want more detail on the PSEs, if you want to hear more about technology solutions, if you want to hear about nutritional labeling, whatever topics that you guys have questions about, or you'd like to have an informational session like this one, shoot us an email. We're always looking for good topics that our clients will find very useful, and we do webinars, we do slide shares. So please feel free to respond with anything you guys would like to hear more about, because we definitely want to put useful information out there. Okay, any last questions? And if we go offline and you still have a question, you definitely have our contact information, so please don't hesitate. We always say we're down here in Florida just looking out the window, waiting for somebody to give us a call. We have nothing else to do before you contact us. No, just kidding, but we do love to hear about your questions and your concerns. So. All right, well, thank you to everybody who attended today. I hope you found value in the webinar, and look for our next webinar. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.